The first item on the agenda is Z 2019-016 in regards to 734209 Ontario Limited. I will just have, I have a blurb I read at the beginning of all public meetings to make people aware of the process and how things work. Please bear with me. Personal information collected at this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected and form part of the minutes which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning. The purpose of the public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant or staff, all the committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for recording in minutes. All comments should be directed to the chair or myself at the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. No decisions are made in public meetings concerning these applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Public meeting reports are provided to inform the public on all relevant information. Information gathered is then referred back to the planning staff for consideration in the review of the application. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering all the comments made by the public in their review of the application. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation to council regarding the application. Following, a council decision notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or a public body would have an ability to appeal the decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal this decision. So thank you for indulging me. We'll move forward with the agenda. Number one on the agenda for tonight is the P38 Energy Inc. 81 County Road 32. So please come forward to the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair, councillors. Thank you for having us. I am Andy Byte from Sleeger's Engineering of London, Ontario. We do the engineering for P38 Energy as well as a number of propane companies around Ontario and Canada. I've got with me E. Marchand, who is the owner of P38 Energy, as well as the branch manager locally, John Bush, and I've got David Fleischer, the planner from WSP. So we've got a short presentation on the proposed facility. Just in terms of the company, P38 Energy is a division of Budget Propane. They're based in Valleyfield. They're owned primarily by Mr. Marchand, who's been in the propane business all his life. And P38 Energy was formed in 1998. The company owns and operates 5 facilities, propane facilities in Quebec and 2 in Ontario, one in Cornwall, which we built in 2018, and one in Arnprior, which is about 2015. The company has a safety culture and a no-compromise attitude to compliance. As a participant in the industry, they have an excellent safety record. Mr. Marchand has been chair of the Canadian Propane Association, the Quebec Propane Association, as well as representing the company on various code committees. The company is a full-service company. So they indulge in propane distribution, propane system installation and service, barbecue cylinder filling, vehicle fueling, and propane appliance sales. So the proposed facility, we're proposing to purchase the land, develop and build a new propane facility on County Road 32, just north of the off-ramp to the 401. It's a 2.5 acre site, and it will be developed in accordance with a site plan agreement.
And can I ask you to just move the microphone just a little bit up closer? There we go. And just because this is being broadcast, so
okay,
make sure it's catching your
okay.
voice.
Usually I'm told I'm too loud. So the facility will consist of a fenced area. Within that fenced area will be a 30,000 gallon propane tank, a small cylinder filling building. All the propane vehicles will be parked within the fenced area, as well as there will be secure lighting. There'll be an entrance right off of County Road 32 with a paved parking area for customers who can then access a retail operation, get their barbecue cylinders filled, and get their vehicles filled. There'll also be, I think the building's 48 by 60 with administration, some warehousing, and a small showroom for appliance sales. So the way this facility will operate is that propane will come in by large trucks from Sarnia, be unloaded into the 30,000 gallon tank, and the smaller trucks will be delivering then to local customers within this catchment area, I guess about 100-kilometer radius or thereabouts. And then cylinders will be delivered to businesses for forklifts within town. The retail showroom office, this is the Cornwall facility. The building will be a little bit bigger than this. Within it will be the administration, appliance showroom, the 30,000 US water gallon tank, cylinder filling dock, and then a cylinder fill and auto dispenser. There'll be one truck unloading spot for the larger trucks to unload, and then 2 truck loading spots. We had to do a traffic study for the MTO, and we used the Cornwall facility as a basis for it. It's a little more mature facility, it's a larger facility, so probably these numbers are a little bit inflated, but approximately 750 trucks per year, an average of just over 2 trucks a day. Typically, propane operation, the busiest time of the year is January when the heating season is on, so there'll be more trucks entering and leaving. So the peak between the service trucks and the delivery trucks both ways is 10 to 12 trucks a day. In addition, there'll be the employees accessing the facility as well as some retail customers. Safety and security. The whole operational area will be authorized personnel only, 6-foot-high chain link fence, 3 strands of barbed wire, well-lit yard and loading areas, security cameras and monitoring, and the system that's been designed is a fully automated operating system, which basically eliminates as much driver error as possible or loading error as possible, where they just have to connect the hoses and they just have one button to press and it automatically opens the valves. When they're finished loading, they press one button to close and it automatically closes everything. That way the plant and the valves are all closed. So we have pneumatic valves controlling the tank, the loading and unloading areas, internal safety control valves, which in the event of a leak, there's an excess flow that automatically shuts off. There's thermal shut-off. In the event of a fire, it shuts off the valves. And then there's also e-stops located throughout the facility where a person can just hit it and it just shuts down all the power and shuts off all the valves. Sounds an alarm, and if the gates are automated, open the gates. Similarly, at the loading areas, there's thermal protection as well as safety hoses to minimize product escape. Fire protection, prevention, protection, and emergency response. We have met with Chief Lawson, and basically the fire department has to approve 3 elements of the risk and safety management plan, which is fire safety, fire protection, and emergency preparedness. So we'll prepare a fire safety plan in accordance with the fire marshal guidelines for fire protection, do the fire safety analysis, and then associated with that is an emergency evacuation plan, which we have to work together with the fire chief, and then also an emergency response plan. And Mr. Marchand is a member of the Canadian Propane Association emergency response organization, which provides technical resources as well as emergency response personnel in the event of an incident. So basically the philosophy is to eliminate source of ignition and eliminate escape of product and eliminate an incident, potential for an incident. There are strict guidelines for a risk and safety management plan from the TSSA, and we have to meet and exceed certain risk criteria that the TSSA has issued, and if you don't meet that risk criteria, then you can't build or operate a facility. The risk and safety management plan is developed and signed off by a professional engineer. It's reviewed and confirmed by a TSSA engineer, and then the fire service has to sign off on fire safety, fire protection, and emergency preparedness. TSSA then issues a facility license after all the requirements have been met, and a TSSA inspector has come out and inspected it. There are regulations regarding the training of drivers and plant personnel. Records of training are required, and then Mr. Marchand has his own P38 Energy Certified program. Maintenance of the facility, there will be a documented preventative maintenance program with a third party doing an annual review and inspection. Similarly, there's monthly inspections and daily startup program, as well as an annual inspection, which the engineer does. Carriers that access the facility also must meet P38 energy requirements. So in summary, from an engineering perspective, it'll be a state-of-the-art facility. It's a relatively large, uncongested site. Exceeds the regulatory requirements for setbacks. There'll be proper safety and security measures. Administrative procedures will be put in place. Personnel will be properly trained, as well as maintaining, and if you take a look at the pictures, Mr. Marchand is proud of his facilities and looks after them very well. We'll do a risk and safety management plan meeting the TSSA requirements, and then emergency response training and documentation, and then a final inspection by the TSSA. I'm going to ask David Fleischer to come up from WSP to discuss the planning issues.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Council. As Anthony mentioned, I'm from WSP. I'm just going to speak specifically to the planning rationale for this proposal. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, we can go past this. Andy already talked about the site. So next slide, please. So quickly kind of showing the surrounding context. As mentioned, it's kind of just north of the 401 ramp, Gananoque, of course, on the south side of the 401. Directly north of the site is the Gananoque Humane Society, and then beyond that, there's a impound lot and then the town's fire station. And across the street, church to the northwest, and directly across is the Thousand Islands helicopter tourist operation, which I'll address a little bit later on as well. So yeah, just made a site visit in November, mid-November, it's November 18th. So just kind of to give some context of what's currently on the site. Because of the snow, you can't maybe see very much, but again, just to kind of give an example, you can see this is looking east across the site, and the site does generally kind of slope upwards from the road. And again, kind of looking the other way, you can just make out the So this is kind of from the top of the site looking down. You can see the roof of the Humane Society off to the right, and the 401 ramp off to the left. Similar view, and here you can see the buildings of the helicopter operation across the street. And then, so this is looking north along along County Road again with the Humane Society, and then you can see the church off to the left across the road again. And then similarly looking back south towards the 401 ramp. And so this is all the stuff that Andy already outlined related to the specifics of the site. And so in terms of the uses we're proposing on the site, the town's zoning bylaw does not speak specifically to a facility along these lines, which is why we have outlined the current zoning is highway commercial zoning, which would permit a gasoline retail facility, which is obviously generally a gas station essentially, as well as the office use. But what it does not permit is the fuel storage tank as an accessory use, which is why we have proposed rezoning to a rural industrial zone. You can go to the next slide again. So just speaking quickly to the planning context again, so under the county's official plan, this is a rural area. So basically rural industrial and commercial uses are permitted in this area, subject to local official plan and the site-specific zoning. And so again, with the local official plan, it's also a rural land. And so in this area, according to section 5.7 of the township's official plan, residential development and other uses are permitted so long as they provide the rural community with opportunities to live and work in a sustainable manner. And commercial and industrial uses are to provide employment opportunities for local residents and services for local residents, tourists, businesses, and the traveling public. And so finally, the zoning bylaw, which as I mentioned, it's currently highway commercial, which would permit the gasoline retail use as well as the office use. Next slide. So the zoning bylaw amendment we are requesting would, as I mentioned, would be for a rural industrial zone. We require one exception, which is that the gasoline retail facility, the zoning bylaw only permits a 9-meter wide driveway, and we would need to widen it slightly to requesting to 11.5 meters to accommodate the turning radius of the trucks and ensure they're not interfering with traffic. And so just to summarize, say that the proposed development represents good land use planning and is appropriate because it is supportive and consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the upper and lower tier official plan policies and is permissible use within the land use designation, and is compatible with the adjacent land uses and compatibility criteria in the township official plan, and that it complies with the general intent of the township zoning bylaw.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Planner, do you have anything to add to this proposal, and before I take any questions from the council?
Thank you, through your worship. Only that there was one piece of correspondence received from the budding landowner that we have provided to the applicant to look into further with respect to Map Canada. Review of the project.
Any questions from council members in regards to this proposal? Council Maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have several questions. First two, possibly back to the presenter, Andy. You were talking about there's going to be ample lighting, but is there going to be backup LED lighting in the event of a power shortage on the site so that it is still well lit with the new LED systems? They can light up that whole area.
Yeah, we're putting in LED lighting, and there'll be a backup generator such that the plant is operational. So, you know, in the event of major power shortage, then Mr. Marshaw can get product to the surrounding areas.
Yes, thank you. And the secondary question, being a secondary valving, I know that you talked about that the valves all fail to a closed state in a power shortage.
Correct.
But in case there's debris caught in first valve, will second valve catch that?
Yes, there is redundant and fail-safe valves behind those, which are manual valves.
Okay, Thank you. Now, I do have several other questions. When looking at this, there's a back gate shown on your plan. Is that to be accessed for vehicular traffic at all? And that goes to the Gananoque Lagoons area?
That's just to go to the top of the property for maintenance purposes.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but I wanted to make sure. Any known improvements to the 401 rampway in the future will that impede any of your service or any of your equipment?
The MTO didn't identify anything about changing the ramp and didn't, in their report, in response to us, identify anything.
Thank you very much. And one of the reports also talked about gasoline and propane, but this is strictly a compressed gas propane service center.
Correct. There will be no gasoline on site other than there may be like a 500-gallon tank for his service vehicles and for lawnmowers and those kind of things. So just not for retail sale.
Okay, thank you. And I know that the original driveway was put in many, many years ago, and I believe that there was a permit for it, and you are asking for an increase in size, and I understand why having that type of vehicle going in and out there. The other thing with that is that one of the proposed documents had a different configuration for your driveways and how the actual layout of the property and the buildings were. So the one that you're showing us tonight is the one that you're going to be proposing.
Yes, yes.
Opposed to that
Did we-
first.
Yeah, we had the first one. We didn't have the survey for the grades, and we didn't have the soils report for the septic system. And so once we had all those, then we had to shift around the configuration because of the grades and also to fit in the septic system.
Thank you. And you also indicated that there's an ongoing inspection process to maintain the safety of the plant itself and all of the storage valves and compliance with TSSA, as I'm very familiar with also. So it is a strict regiment, and that would be.
Yes, yeah, it's company policy. They have a daily startup inspection, and then they appoint, there's a health and safety committee, there's a representative and employee that then does a monthly inspection. Mr. Marchand gets a third party to do his annual inspection and the whole preventative maintenance program, greasing things and checking belts and all of those items. And then there's the TSSA inspection, which initially is every year.
Thank you for that. The other thing is, because of our fire services and ambulance being within the blast zone of one of your slides, this
Yeah.
particular one, was there any thoughts given to a berm possibly protecting that building from actually getting the severe blast? And is any of your other facilities within the same proximity to a fire ambulance center?
I don't believe Mr. Marchand's is, but there are other facilities around Ontario, such as Blythe, Ontario is one that comes to mind. We did a quick calculation on it's towards the edge of the blast radius. Outside that blast radius, there's virtually no damage and no risk. There is the potential for some broken windows and maybe blowing out doors, that kind of pressure wave.
Just like I hate to have the fire department.
No, I know,
fire
exactly, be out of
can't
business.
get you.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that would be a terrible.
Bring 911, right?
The
That's-
ambulance, can't put a baby on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we, the fire chief raised that same concern.
The one other question I have is that Gananoque is fed by natural gas, and I know the line comes somewhere in that area from the northern pipeline. I know Enbridge didn't indicate that, but has there been any thought on where it is and what proximity it is to your blast zone?
I think it's quite a bit north. It's quite a bit north. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know, you know where it is, Guy?
The Enbridge main line is the feed line to Gananoque, I believe, it comes down in that area somewhere. Just a thought that I think we need to verify.
I didn't, the biggest exposure with those is like the natural gas pipelines are underground and buried, so there's a natural protection there. If there was a district regulating station, which is above ground, then there'd be the potential for that, but I didn't see that anywhere there in my travels when we did the public receptors.
Yeah, just that where the power authority is, they have a thermal generator station there, and I don't know whether they have natural gas feeding that or not. That's why it's kind of, because they could have a distribution center there.
I didn't specifically see one, but we can investigate that.
Thank you, Councillor Maybe. Any further questions from councillors? Councillor Wilkie?
Thank you, Your Worship, and for you. I think Councillor Maybe already asked all the technical questions. I'm curious, the 8 employees that you'll have there, are these people who will be posted from other sites, or are you looking at new hires?
There's new hires. John is a new hire. They've already hired an administrator, a salesperson, and 1 delivery driver. And currently they're hauling out of the Cornwall facility.
But ultimately, we'll move to...
Yes. Ultimately, the plan is to have local residents and local jobs. And that's Guy's philosophy.
Thank you very much. Any, Councillor Cody?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I missed the clarification when you said during an emergency power shutdown, how do the gates operate?
That they would have to hit a button, and then you'd have to do a release, okay, to do it manually.
Okay, thank you. The only other question I had was to our planner. Have you received any opposition to this at all from any residents in the area?
Through Your Worship, we had received one letter in writing with some concerns, which is being further investigated from the helicopter as it relates to Mount Canada.
Yeah, we can talk about that because we WSP do have an aviation division that had to look into it.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So I'm not an aviation planner. We do have an aviation planning department. So basically, there's a NAV Canada land use submission form that we have to do, and we're undertaking that now. It's our understanding it'll take them about 8 to 12 weeks to get back. The helicopter operators indicated that basically the flight path goes over, and that you're not supposed to have compressed gas facilities underneath the flight path. So essentially, our aviation planning people can work on the client's behalf with them to mitigate that and to deal with that. And we can do that proactively, kind of even before we hear back from NAV Canada, or it's actually from Transportation Canada. So again, I can't speak to all the specific technical aspects, but that's basically what they do, is they would adjust the flight path if necessary.
If you look at like the very last slide that I had, Mr. Marchand has a facility right across from the Mirabel Airport, sort of right on the end of the runway. So it is achievable, and I know at Pearson we have an 18,000 gallon tank right at the airport for heating the glycol for when you have to de-ice.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Cody?
No, I don't think so. I think the gentleman just answered it. I have seen that Mirabel site. I didn't realize that was yours. I want to thank you for a well-prepared presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Any further questions from councillors? Any further comments from the planner? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, well, thank you for your presentation and for your application, and we'll be getting back to you shortly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Z-2019-017, Kennedy, 823 Sunset Lane. Madam Planner, do you have anything to discuss in regards to this application? Madam Planner, do you have anything in regards to this application? This is the Kennedy Lane one. Or sorry, Sunset Lane, Kennedy. I apologize.
Thank you. Through Your Worship, this is a very technical amendment to correct floodplain mapping based on updated mapping. Right now, the way the floodplain line crosses the property, it cuts it in half. The Conservation Authority has confirmed that the floodplain is actually right along the shoreline, which relocating the floodplain line through the zoning will make this property developable. In addition to the floodplain update, this application is also requesting an increase in lot coverage for the property from 10% to 12%. It's quite a minor technical application. It's been circulated. No concerns have been identified by any of the technical agencies that have reviewed it. I would also note that this is on the agenda later this evening with a recommendation to council.
Any questions in regards to this application as it's presented? I think it's fairly straightforward, being that the floodplain is actually not through the middle of the property, it's actually on the edge of the property. Councillor Bailey?
The one thing that, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, the one thing I noticed was the right-of-way for the adjacent property kind of comes onto the corner of their property. It's clearly given in their deed that this right-of-way must be maintained. It's
Private road. It's private road.
Would it still have an easement on that private?
Depending on the age of the right-of-way and the way that it's deeded, it may be, but it's a private matter between the owners.
Any further questions or concerns in regards to this application? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the third item on the agenda. Z-2019-015 734-209 Ontario Limited, Rockport Boat Line, 1994 Limited. If you'd like to come to the podium and give your presentation, and then we'll have comments from the planner and questions from council and the public.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Mike Keane, and I'm a land use planner with FOTEN Consultants. And I am here this evening with my colleague Kelsey Jones from FOTEN. And there is representation from the ownership group from the boat line, as well as a number of the department heads are here this evening should some further questions be required. So this evening is really all about a supplemental application to our original planning application, which was heard in November. And you'll recall that that application was to change the old government dock, which has institutional zoning, to the tourist commercial zone. And a lot of the comments that have been presented to this committee, to this council, and through the strategic session have been related to how busy Rockport is, and traffic issues are a major deal. So when our application came forward, there was concern that we were proposing to expand the boat line operations, when in fact what's necessary is some repair to the docking due to a couple years of high water. So to assure this committee and to assure the public that the application about the new dock is not about expanding business, what we're proposing this evening is to put a holding provision on all of the boat line's properties. So that would include the property where we're proposing the new dock or an improvement to the existing dock, but it would expand to all of the properties. And what the holding provision would do is it would require a number of studies by the boat line before they could increase the capacity of the boat line operations. So we looked at the boats themselves, we looked at the Transport Canada capacities, and with that number, we write through the zoning and the holding provision that we're proposing. We're saying lock it down to 1,100 person capacity for the boats, and that if the capacity was to be increased, that would trigger applications across the site to do transportation studies and so on and so forth. So it's really an application of good faith. It is really to complement our rezoning of the institutional zone so that we can do some dock improvements. And that's really the summary of what's before this committee this evening. We've worked closely with staff on the wording to ensure that it accomplishes what we're saying we want to do, and so that staff have something that's enforceable and usable when and if the time ever comes that the boat line needs to expand its boat operations in particular. And I'm pleased to answer any questions that may arise of the committee, and I've got lots of help if anything comes up that's beyond a planning question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Planner, do you have anything to add before we take questions from council?
Thank you, through your worship. I just note that there were 2 items of public correspondence received with respect to this application that have been distributed to council, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So questions from the council in regards to this revised application? Councilor Brown?
Thank you, and through you, your worship. When we're talking, right now, we're sort of in a freeze hold here, freeze mode with this age designation. It's been made clear that it was submitted that there's an 1,100 capacity in terms of the boats. This came apparently from Transport Canada. Great. At what level are you currently operating? Or would you prefer not to tell us? Because to say that this could be a huge increase, we don't know. So when we are being asked to freeze it, I think it would be helpful for us to understand how many more buses would it take to fill to that current capacity. Now, again, that might be a trade secret. You might be a little nervous about telling us that, but I'm a little nervous about giving you that capacity right now. Thanks.
Through you, your worship. I don't, really what I was trying to do, and what I worked with the ownership group on was trying to create some way to enforce the boat line in some kind of capacity. So I don't think I've thought in a crafty way where I'm trying to deceive this council in terms of asking for a capacity. So what I proposed with the acceptance of the boat line is some way of locking down a number. And so that's why we looked at the capacities of the boats, and we provided those Transport Canada documents to have a look at them. Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's fair to say, like the boat, I don't think it's often that you would have all 4 boats even out at the same time. There's crew and capacity. But what I can tell this committee is that there was an honest attempt to try to lock down the capacity of the boat beyond, what its legal non-conforming or conforming uses might be now. So that was honestly the best I could do. Do they ever have 1,100 people going out at one time? I doubt it.
Any further questions, Councillor Maybe?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up with Councillor Hall. The boat size is 1,089 passengers, close to 101. But again, on its duration of travel time, if it's a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour tour, you're going to get an influx and changeover of that passenger. So is there going to be? They've had these 4 boats for what, 3 years now?
3?
Is that right? 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years, yes.
3 years.
So
Your worship, I'm not certain on that. Oh,
Yeah, through you, your worship, you do have a few holding provisions. When we were drafting the holding provisions, we were attempting to use some language that was already acceptable by the municipality in the past. I guess what I can't say for sure is whether that applies to a business or just a homeowner or a landowner.
Good question. Any further questions from council? Okay, seeing none, I'll take questions from the public at this point in time. If any, please come forward, state your name, your address, please.
Margot Miller, 12 Front Street, Rockport. I'll add long-term resident. The mayor and councilors, thanks for putting all this work into this holding designation and also the boat line. But boy, I sure have a lot of questions still that I'd like to answer. And I really appreciate Councillor Gorell's comment and question about the capacity of the boat line as, what was it, 1,089 or something, or 1,002 at one point. But my understanding is that one of the boats can take, the big new one, can take 500 people. Am I correct?
No, you're not. 325.
325 on the big red one.
Yes.
Okay, so,
I need you to put your questions forward to
All right.
us, and then we'll have
Okay.
them all answered at the end.
yes, all
Okay?
right. So if that one boat takes 325, and then how many times does it go out? I believe it's the 1-hour cruise. And I just would like to have the numbers clarified a little bit more that Council Gurel asked for. But just something also to remember is that, you know, in all this strategic planning and all these things that we have been doing, you know, it's not really the number of people that are going out in the boat. It's the impact that getting them there is having on the village. And that's really the problem. I mean, people going out on the boats, it's wonderful to have international travelers, as far as I'm concerned, seeing, you know, the Thousand Islands. But it's the impact of getting them there, the endless buses, the endless traffic. Not only the traffic, the pollution, the backup noise, and the delivery transport trucks that have to come into town early in the morning, the garbage trucks, all that to deal with that high quantity of people. I can tell you 12 delivery trucks that come in every day, you know, and early in the morning, and that the garbage dump comes at 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and the pump out. But anyhow, so it's the impact of getting all those people to the boats and to the restaurants and so on. But the other thing is, I have never seen a site plan of the village with the Rockport boat line. And I've asked about this before because where I live, there's parking all around me. And as I recall, when the Prohaskas owned the boathouse and the Cornwall's pub, and they tried to expand their parking, they got turned down all the time because of their site plan. They didn't have the same enough capacity for the bathrooms. So I can't see how all this expansion has gone on with the recent owners of the boat line, including the tiki bar and 100 people out there on a Saturday night. All of this, we have never seen a site plan for all the parking around me that occurs from May to end of September. So I would appreciate if Planner Vendetti could send me that, if there is a site plan. There is no site plan.
site plan control at this point in time. This application would put site plan control on.
Would it also, do we have some input into that then, in the future, if this gets passed?
Through your worship, as long as site plan complies with zoning, there's no public input process. The public input process is through a zoning application or a minor variance application.
So with this zoning, rezoning, and even with the holding, couldn't they expand even parking further up the hill? There's like 200 and 300 cars all around me. Can that expand?
Through your worship, if what they would be proposing is compliant with zoning, it would be subject to site plan control. It would have to comply with zoning though, and the zoning as it exists would not allow additional parking right now.
So there's basically no parking in the site plan at this point. Is that
Which
correct?
is, I believe, why the holding symbol is going on. Am I correct to, because there's no wish to expand the operations right now, because if there's not more parking, you're not bringing more people in.
But the site plan says there should be no parking already, and there exists for
There is
tourism.
no site plan.
Okay. I'm
Sorry.
yeah, I get it.
Just
Just to be clear, what's in front of council right now is the proposal to add the holding symbol to limit to what is on the ground today and to allow a dock. A review of all of the parking and all of the compliance as it is proposed for the rest of the site isn't something that's part of this application because it's an existing use with existing status. What the holding symbol does is allows us a better tool to make sure going forward that any new change to the site or any modifications to the site is compliant with zoning in terms of setbacks, in terms of buffering. It allows us the opportunity to look at those details and bring this site together to make sure that it is compliant with zoning. It also puts the check on there that council has to remove the holding symbol to allow any development to proceed.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
So can you continue with your question?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure if there's anybody else who wants to
Yeah,
ask
I know,
questions.
okay. Yeah, I do have a few things. So the other concern I have is that, I think at the other meeting, Councillor Gorell asked whether there was an engineering okay plan, just like we had to have for the customs dock. Has that been done for the new dock?
That will be done and be brought forward as part of site plan control.
So also the other thing, isn't it a bit inconsistent that you're passing an amendment 1 hour after we've had our public meeting here?
So the only amendment to the original application that I understand is this holding symbol, correct? So the public meeting has already happened for the original application, and people had the opportunity to come forward and make their questions or concerns at that point in time. Since then, the Rockport boat line and the planner have worked together in regards to amending the application to make it more palatable to the public as well as the business, to work together to put this holding symbol on, so we're going to ease concerns about expansion, which is what we heard from the previous public meeting. Would that be correct, Madam Planner?
That's correct. The previous application public meeting was in November. This one has been modified. The only reason we're having the additional public meeting is because of the additional lands that have been brought into the holding symbol, which is something that we have worked with the boat lines owners on to try to address public concerns.
Okay. And also it says in the official plan that the land adjacent to the subject property where the dock is proposed is designated environmental protection in the official plan. The upland property is designated tourist commercial. Where is that environmental protection parcel on the property?
It's the shoreline.
Oh, it's the shoreline, okay. Sorry, please bear with me, this is important to me too, that we get this clear. So there was something else I wanted to ask about. An area that I wasn't sure where you were identifying. And I'll leave it for now and let someone else have their comments. But the other thing is that I also want to question is why, to me, this would seem like two issues. One is to get the zoning bylaw passed, and the other then is to have an oversized dock. Now, when the Ivy had put in an oversized dock, there was quite a kerfuffle over that. So I don't understand how one can make sure that the other can happen. I know you touched on it, but isn't that something that should be brought up to public again on two issues, that's rezoning and then an oversized dock? It will have impact, I'm sure, on the front of Rockport. And as I wrote in my other comments in the first meeting, is that if we're trying to keep the heritage village, the integrity of it, having this massive dock and boats all across the front, seems to me will have some impact on our heritage village that we're trying to preserve. Anyhow, that's really just a comment.
Thank you
All
very much.
right, thanks.
Any other further comments, please come forward, state your name.
My name is Jack Sturkin. I live on 63 Burgess Lane in Rockport. Again, I also wish to express my concern about the process. This holding pattern that you're discussing, we have no idea what it is we're holding, because the answer about the number of passengers, for instance, on the boats per day was not answered. You can keep the same number of boats, you can fill them up more, or you can have more frequent trips. And again, redouble the problems with traffic down at the bottom end of Front Street. The boat line is the cause for a lot of the congestion and a lot of the pollution and a lot of noise that we have to put up with. We live next to a world resource, a fantastic resource, and most of us came to live here because of that resource. But the quality of our lives are being fundamentally affected and negatively affected by these activities. If we are going to have a holding, whatever you call it, pattern on these amendments, then we need to know the number of boat trips, not the number of boats, I don't care. If one boat makes 10 trips, or one boat makes 5 trips and 4 trips, it makes a big difference, okay? So it's one thing to know the passenger capacity of the boats, it's another thing to know the frequency of the trips and the boat levels, say average over the last 3 years. Because already those realities have severely strained the infrastructure capacity of the village. It has virtually destroyed the village. We need to get the buses away from the south end of Front Street. We need to find a solution for that. We need to realign the parking lot for the buses so the buses don't have to back up. If you go to Europe, you see many bus stations, they drive in one end of an aisle and drive out another and away they go. That would eliminate a hell of a racket with all these buses when they're backing up. Beep, 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 all day long, all over the village. We need to separate the vehicle traffic from the pedestrians. It has been claimed that the pedestrian situation will improve. I haven't seen why. They still need to cross the road. And right now there is no proper separation between the parking lot and the roadway. There are no sidewalks anywhere to be seen. Where the new dock is supposed to be, that's where most of the contractors do their loading and unloading. So in fact, the conflict with pedestrians would increase, not decrease. So all these things, I think, need to be addressed before any consideration should be given to setting standards of the type of use that the boat line can make. The boat line has a reputation for stretching and pushing the bylaws and their rights. For instance, I notice I walk by there every day. At the boat launch, the boat line has built about a 6-foot extension of their deck over the water at the boat launch. How did that happen? There is no dock at the boat launch. I can launch my boat, but then I can't get out. Okay, there's nowhere to tie up my boat. And I think it is this creeping kind of taking things for granted, restricting things, that is part of the problem. We need to separate Front Street from that parking lot at the south end. There needs to be either a barrier like they have on the east side of the parking lot, so that there is a clear separation between the parking lot and the road. Then maybe the boat line can manage the crossing of the pedestrians, because right now it is chaos. Not only are they all over the road, but they're all over our property. Okay, and frankly, I don't mind. I think sometimes it's kind of funny to have your picture taken every time you move along, but nevertheless, it is also dangerous, because those buses are big and they have many blind spots. And with the density of pedestrians that are just wandering all over the place, something's going to happen. And I think if you do not, for instance, pass rules and bylaws that are consistent with public safety, that promote public safety, or that ignore public safety, then you're incurring a contingent liability. If somebody's going to get squished by one of those buses one of these days, I'll guarantee it. I walk my dog there every day. It's amazing how these passengers just are completely oblivious, okay, to vehicles. So something needs to be done about that. We need to make plans about, for instance, where do the passengers stand once they leave the bus and they wait to board the ship, the boats, okay? There is nothing there. There are no fences there. Very often they line up right across the road. So I would suggest, for instance, that the buses access the parking lot from the parkway. The property goes right up to the parkway. It's not very convenient, there's a big rock there, but you know, Canadians have been known to blow up rocks. You can get access on their own property right from the parkway to their parking lots. Okay? It is eminently possible. There has to be a will. There has to be a willingness for the boat line to invest in infrastructure. We have permanent porta potties out there. Okay? 4 on the boat property and 2 more on the property of the restaurant. That's not acceptable. You know, they're there permanently. Porta potties are for construction sites, you know, and for temporary arrangements. These sort of things, pushing these little limits. If you're going to increase, or you've doubled in passengers over the last few years, then you need to increase your services and your capacity, your toilets. You know, you built a big thing 150 yards away, but most, you know, in the meantime, everybody's peeing in the bushes around Margot's property, you know, because it's too far away. They don't want to bother walking all the way up the hill. Besides, when all the buses arrive, it's too busy anyway. You know, you have to wait too long. So, I think also before anything is built in terms of a big dock, the boat launch should be finished. The boat launch is of critical importance to the economy of the southern part of this township. Okay? It's used by the cottagers, who are your huge tax base, okay? And it is used by contractors. They need to be supported. They need to be looked after. They need to have the capacity to use it. The traffic study suggested that maybe you should move it. Well, good luck. Where are you going to move it? There's no other place. It needs to be finished. That boat launch has been on the books for at least 4 or 5 years, you know, and it hasn't been implemented. Why not? Okay? It is very important to the community. It is important to the cottagers, who are your tax base, and it is important to the contractors, who are far more important to this economy than the boat line. So that's basically some of the points. I suggested in here, but as we take care of, that you have a legal arrangement between the boat line about capacity. But it should reflect today's use, not the capacity of the boats. Like 4 boats of 1,100 people with no limit on the number of trips they can make, or whether or not they're 100% filled or 75% filled, is a big difference. We cannot accommodate more buses and more people under the current circumstances. You know, if the, you know, the promise not to get more boats or not to increase the capacity of the boats means nothing to the potential congestion that exists in Rockport in the bottom line, because it says nothing about the actual number of people who have used it over the last few years. It says nothing about the number of trips the boats have taken, or which boat has taken how many trips. If you use the big boat more often, again, you double your capacity. You know, in the first 2 years, that big boat didn't go very often. Now, this year, it went all the time. So
Can I ask you to wrap your,
Okay.
we're running over time, and I'd like the boat line to have a chance to respond.
I could go on for hours, but yeah, basically what I say is, we need to consider, first of all, the results and the recommendations of the traffic study that's coming out, okay, before any hold criteria are put on these properties. Right now, we know nothing. We know there's a hold, but we don't know what it's holding. Okay. So that means it's meaningless. The next time somebody has an idea, you apply for an amendment and you get it. So I think we need to have all kinds of assurances from the boat line and improvements in facilities of the boat line to reflect the increased use of the community by the boat line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Now, would anybody from the boat line like to say anything to wrap this up?
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Ted Faubert. I'm one of the owners of the boat line. I've been an owner since 1991. I think it's important to recognize that what we're here today for is to bring the zoning into conformity with the official plan. The official plan designates the site as tourist commercial. The boat line operation has been there for 65 years. We purchased it in 1991 when it was fledgling. I don't want to apologize for our success because I think the success is important, not only for us but for the community. But we are aware of the impacts. We are working with the township through the strategic plan to try to address some of the issues that you've heard previously, but I do want to respond to a number of them. First of all, capacity. When we were here in November, the concern was that we were going to limit it to 4 boats. And the thought was that we were going to replace a small boat with a big boat. We're not intending to do that. We recognize that the boat line is at capacity. We are also trying to reduce, if possible, the number of buses that end up in our parking lot. And how are we doing that? We're promoting as much as we can a walk-in trade to our business so that we can control for that. But the capacity of the boats isn't the only control on capacity. It's the parking area, it's our staff resources. People here will tell you that we don't need any more people at the boat line. We're feeling the stress of where we're at now. So we have no intention to grow. Never are those 4 boats at full capacity going out together. The schedule, you can go on the website. It's the same this year as it was last year. The fact that we're stretching and pushing, well, I have to take offense to that. We did make a mistake with our tiki bar. We thought because of the size that we didn't need a building permit, but we did meet on site with the planning and building officials and with the Conservation Authority, with the agents to get our liquor license extended to that area. It was at their suggestion that we put 2 portable washrooms there. We didn't require them. If it is an issue for the township as part of the plan, we'll remove them. I mean, we put them there as a convenience and as a suggestion. The fact that we don't invest in the infrastructure, we just spent $350,000 to put a state-of-the-art septic system in to deal with our tourists. We're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade our docks and make them usable for our business. We have improved all of the buildings. We haven't, if you look at that site today, and you look at that site 20 years ago when we got involved in what's almost 30 years now, there's nothing new. We've got a new ticket office, and we've got a new tiki bar. Everything else is the same, but they've all been improved. All the roofs have been redone, all the interiors of the hotel's been upgraded. We take pride in those improvements, and I just have to respond to that. In closing, I'll just say that we are here. We're going to work with the township on the broader strategic plan. I think that's where many of the issues that were raised can be addressed and hopefully dealt with. We're here to work with you on that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert. Okay, so that concludes the public meeting for the Rockport boat line. And now number 4 on the agenda is adjournment. I have a motion here, moved by Councilor Burrell, seconded by Councilor Volpe. The public meeting adjourned. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed?